Well, good morning and welcome to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Aiken. We are broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Market Street in Corning. We have a lot to cover today. Really looking forward to it. We're going to be talking with Chemung County Sheriff Bill Schrom. That is in the 7 o'clock hour. You won't want to miss that. We have a very busy week left. I know it's Wednesday, but we've got a lot to talk about this morning with special guest Sheriff Schrom. Tomorrow we'll be talking with Elmira City Court Judge candidate Jordan York, and we'll be talking a little bit about this weekend's, well, actually it starts tomorrow, I think, the Days of Incandescence. We'll tell you about that, what that is in Corning. And then on Friday, Greg Tranter is going to be joining us. He's going to tell us all about the books he's written about the Buffalo Bills, his lifelong passion for the Bills, because coming up this Sunday, we have at 1 o'clock the Bills taking on the Panthers right here on Big Fox. All right, let's get the viewer comments. Mark writes in, good morning, Frank, and I say good morning, Mark. I see one of Trump's January 6th rioters has threatened Hakeem Jeffrey's life. Yes, he has a connection to upstate. I want to say he's from Clinton, New York. That he was arrested for that. I don't have a lot of information on that, but yes, thank you. That is a major story this morning. We may get to it. I think maybe I have an article in here. We may get to that in just a little bit. I am going to start the broadcast after these viewer comments with a lot of updates that broke late yesterday. Comment from a different viewer. Good morning, Frank. Well, good morning. I see our government is starting student loan forgiveness. I was wondering how many times a student from another country gets a loan and goes back home never to pay it back. That's a fair question. I know there's been a lot of problems in regards to the student loan process. We brought to you just the initial update on that yesterday, that a deal was made between the Trump administration and the teachers union on that student loan forgiveness. There's a lot of, what's the word I want to look for? It's dependent upon a certain group, certain criteria. And we may have a little bit more on that later on. But yes, thank you for bringing that to our attention. And finally, it's time for Karen's Quote of the Week. And we'll read this in the 7 o'clock hour as well, because I don't want anybody to miss it. Karen starts off by saying good morning. Good morning, Karen. Thank you, as always, for your quote of the week. The quote for the week goes out to all the voters, particularly in New York City. But anytime a candidate is claiming their brand of socialism will be different. This quote comes from a man very familiar with the topic, Vladimir Lenin, saying, and I quote, "The goal of socialism is communism." Thank you very much, Karen. Again, that's Lenin. I didn't expect a Lenin quote. The goal of socialism is communism. And speaking of that, we're going to be talking about the mayoral race a little bit this morning, but more so tomorrow, because tonight, if you're not aware, tonight is another mayoral debate, the last of just 2 scheduled debates. The New York Times speculating, is this the last time Andrew Cuomo debates? I don't think so. I think many of us believe that the days of Cuomo, even if he loses, which it looks like he's on track to lose, I think the days of Cuomo just going down the old dusty trail, I think is a ways off. Okay. Let's get to some breaking stories from yesterday. First, a man has been taken into custody late last night after driving his car into a security barrier outside the White House. The U.S. Secret Service said the man crashed into the security gate at a White House entrance at 10:37 p.m. last night. The man was immediately arrested by officers from the Secret Service's Uniform Division, according to the agency. Investigators searched his car and deemed it to be safe, Secret Service officials said in a statement. Authorities did not immediately provide any additional information about the crash, the driver's identity, or any potential motivation. So we'll keep you updated on that as news breaks. Also last night, President Trump's pick to head the federal agency tasked with protecting whistleblowers has withdrawn his nomination. You may have heard of this. This was a scandal. He bragged about having a, quote, Nazi streak and a series of disturbing text messages. So this comes as no surprise. It was really only a matter of time before he withdrew. Paul Ingrasai, I don't think I'm pronouncing that right, Ingrasai, who is expected to testify before a Senate panel later this week on his nomination to lead the Office of Special Counsel, revealed in a social media post that he didn't have enough support to be confirmed for the job, and he lost that support when those text messages were released, and that should come as no surprise. He said, "I will be withdrawing myself from Thursday's Senate Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Committee hearing to lead the Office of Special Counsel because, unfortunately, I do not have enough Republican votes at this time. I appreciate the overwhelming support that I've received throughout this process and will continue to serve President Trump and this administration to make America great again." Now, Ingrasai, who's 30, had faced mounting calls for his nomination to be yanked after Politico reported on leaked text messages that he sent to about a half dozen fellow Republicans last year. He allegedly wrote in one message back in May of last year, "I do have a Nazi streak in me from time to time. I will admit it." He also said, man, these texts are disturbing. Martin Luther King Jr. was the 1960s George Floyd, and his holiday should be ended and tossed into the seventh circle of, you know what, where it belongs. Oof. Yeah, there is no surprise that he has had to withdraw from any consideration. Ingrasai, who currently serves as a White House liaison with the Department of Homeland Security, is also said to have used an Italian-American slur against black people in one offensive text. I'm not going to read any more of these texts. I think you get the message. Senate Majority Leader John Thune, who signaled opposition to the nominee, teased earlier Tuesday that President Trump might pull Ingrasai's nomination. I think they'll have something official to say about that. But you know what we've said, and you'll probably be hearing from them soon. Senator Rick Scott, a member of the Senate panel that was considering the nomination, was adamant that he would not vote to confirm him. "I'm not supporting him. I can't imagine how anybody can be anti-Semitic in this country. It is wrong." So, withdrawing late yesterday over social media. Also breaking yesterday, not quite as late, but breaking yesterday, the state of Arizona is suing the Republican-controlled U.S. House of Representatives over the delayed swearing in of Democratic Representative-elect Adelita Grijalva. I don't know if I'm saying that properly. No disrespect meant. Just never heard it said out loud, only you've read it. Grijalva, 54, won a special election last month to fill the House seat that was left vacant when her father passed away in March, who had the seat, of course. House Speaker Mike Johnson has said he will swear her in when the House returns, but has kept lawmakers out of Washington for more than a month, saying they will not return until the Senate passes a measure to end the ongoing government shutdown. Arizona Attorney General Kristen May said this case is about whether someone duly elected to the House who indisputably meets the constitutional qualifications of the office may be denied her rightful office simply because the Speaker has decided to keep the House out of regular session. As a result, let me take a step back. They argue that the U.S. Constitution does not grant Johnson the authority to thwart the people's choice. As a member, according to the lawsuit, Arizona wants a judge to deem Grijalva a member of the House once she has taken the oath and have that oath administered by any person authorized to do so if Johnson refuses. Johnson has called the lawsuit patently absurd. "We run the House. She has no jurisdiction. We're following the precedent. She's looking for national publicity. Apparently she's gotten some of it, but good luck with that." Now, people are saying that the delay isn't because, well, again, the House hasn't been in session because of the government shutdown. Johnson saying he would bring them back once the Senate passes a measure about the ongoing shutdown. But Grijalva has vowed once sworn in to provide the final signature needed on a lawmaker's petition to force a vote on a controversial bill ordering the release of all unclassified records related to the late convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. So that is why this is making national news, because we know that the media has tried to use Epstein as kind of a crudgel over the Trump administration. Grijalva said in a statement, "Speaker Johnson cannot continue to disenfranchise an entire district and suppress their representation to shield this administration from accountability and block justice for the Epstein survivors." we don't need to get into the discussion on Epstein any further. You know my thoughts on that. This should have been done a long time ago, but now there's a passion for it because they believe it is something that will hurt Trump amongst his supporters. I think that has calmed down, but the national media, of course, still making hay from it. Also, ex-CIA Director John Brennan has been referred to the Justice Department for prosecution. Depending on what outlet you go to, they'll say more retribution coming from Trump. More, I guess that works. But more pettiness. House Judiciary Committee Chairman Jim Jordan referred ex-CIA Director John Brennan to the Justice Department yesterday for criminal prosecution over false statements he allegedly made to Congress related to the 2016 Trump-Russia collusion probe. Now, do I know what's going to come out of all this? I do not. But I like that people are, well, at least initially being held accountable for what I think at one point was accepted. Well, they lied under oath, allegedly, lied under oath. Nothing we can do about it. We're not going to go after them. You know, whether it's James Comey, whether it's Brennan. So it's nice to see at least some initial steps taken, depending on where it goes from here. Time will tell. Jordan, in a letter to Attorney General Pam Bondi, indicated there is significant evidence the Obama-era spy chief made numerous, willfully, and intentionally false statements during his May 11, 2023 testimony. Jordan, writing on Twitter, John Brennan lied to Congress. Today, we referred him to the Department of Justice for criminal prosecution. I'm not going to go through each specific quote, but because that gets a little bit too in the weeds, but just as an update there. All right. Also, this making the rounds, Trump says he could be seeking $230 million from his own Justice Department for compensation for past investigations into him, though he professed to have little knowledge of the specifics and said he would give the money to charity, this coming from CNN. It could be, Trump responded when Caitlin Collins asked about seeking money in connection with the complaints he filed about past DOJ investigations. I don't know about the numbers. I don't even talk to them about it. All I know is that they could owe me, or they would owe me a lot of money, but I'm not looking for money. I'll give it to charity or something. Though many of the details remain unclear, Trump acknowledged the unprecedented nature of the situation in which he would be potentially paying himself damages to resolve claims that the Justice Department under his predecessor had wronged him. Trump saying, with the country, it's interesting because I'm the one that makes the decision. It's awfully strange to make a decision where I'm paying myself. In other words, did you ever have one of those cases where you have to decide how much you're paying yourself in damages? All right, so there's a couple of breaking stories. Also, I'm running late. We've got a handful of other breaking stories and updates from yesterday's news. A couple things here about the No Kings rally. But we are going to but we have a lot to talk about. Well, not just New York. I've got some good information, not declaring yet, but good information coming from Elise Stefanik. We'll talk about that. We've got some updates on Hochul, but also about the mayor's race, which, again, the debate, the last and final mayoral debate is tonight beginning at 7 o'clock. So, wow, we've hit on a lot, and we're just getting warmed up. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking after this. The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. We are back, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. Welcome to day 22 of the government shutdown. Now the second longest in United States history. This surpasses the 1995-1996 lapse. And this time, there's no end in sight. Senate Democrats have blocked Republican attempts to reopen the government 11 times since October the 1st, when all but 3 members of the caucus voted against moving forward with a House-passed measure to keep federal departments and agencies funded at current levels through November the 21st. The Senate will gavel in at 10 a.m. today to try yet again to end the shutdown as Democrat leaders demand a meeting with President Trump. House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries and I reached out to the president today and urged him to sit down and negotiate with us to resolve the health care crisis, address it, and end the Trump shutdown, said Chuck Schumer. We urged him to meet with us, and we have said we will set up an appointment with him anytime, any place before he leaves. However, House Speaker Mike Johnson maintains that no high-level meeting will take place until Democrats vote to reopen the government. Johnson wrote, Senate Majority Leader John Thune and I visited with President Trump this afternoon, and he confirmed he is ready and willing for the three of us to meet with Leader Jeffries and Senator Schumer as soon as Schumer reopens the government. At the White House, where Trump held a Rose Garden gathering for congressional Republicans, Thune signaled that he is not interested in negotiating, saying, I don't know what there is to negotiate. Open up the government first. So here we are. How has your life been affected? All right, we had a couple of viewer comments. I just didn't want to forget that because we have a lot more breaking news. Comments from viewers. Argentina beef to the rescue. Many beef farmers are low on stock because they couldn't afford to feed them the last 4 years. This will put pressure on processors to lower prices and buy more American beef. Just like everything Trump does, it all works out. Remember when he imported eggs. Also a comment. Unlike the Democrat judiciary, and judiciary is in quotes, which fabricates crimes tailored to their political adversaries, the recent federal indictments of high-ranking former federal officials is actually about the real crimes committed. It is essential that the rule of law is applied in these grave cases where top officials broke the laws with the intentional and deliberate goal of subverting the democratic process. These indictments must proceed. Thank you very much. A couple of, I guess you could say, court kind of investigations. Adam Smith, Democrat Adam Smith, the House Armed Services Committee ranking member, has called for an immediate hearing into President Trump's authorization of lethal U.S. military strikes on suspected drug smuggling boats in the Caribbean, citing unanswered questions about their legality, oversight, and the recent early retirement of U.S. Southern Command Commander Admiral Alvin Halsey. Smith released a formal statement urging Speaker Johnson to reconvene the House to end the ongoing government shutdown and permit congressional oversight of the Trump administration's counter-narcotics campaign. You know, I mentioned this numerous times on the program. I find it interesting because we see a time, especially in New York, but throughout the whole country, where you have the Democrat Party siding with criminals very often or siding with illegal aliens. Now Trump has forced their hand to side with drug cartels, I guess. In his statement, he said, President Trump and his administration continue to fail to answer pressing questions regarding the president's orders to carry out lethal U.S. military strikes on boats in the Caribbean Sea. They have failed to demonstrate the legality of these strikes, provide transparency on the process used, or even a list of cartels that have been designated a terrorist organization. Never before in my over 20 years on this committee can I recall seeing a combatant commander leave their post this early and amid such turmoil. A staggering lack of transparency on behalf of an administration and the department to meaningfully inform Congress on the use of lethal military force. All right, there we go. Another update. I know. Sorry, it's a morning full of updates. This is interesting coming out of Florida. A Republican Florida state lawmaker proposed a bill Monday that would open up opportunities for families to sue some local governments over killings committed by illegal immigrants. The Shane Jones Act, which would expand on the Sunshine State's staunch immigration laws, was authored in honor of its namesake, who was killed in a traffic accident involving an alleged illegal immigrant back in 2019. Representative Bernie Jacks, who introduced the bill, said that Jones' widowed wife, Nikki, helped inspire the bill, which would impose harsher restrictions on illegal immigrants and even law enforcement officials violating the state's immigration policies. For too long, American families have been left to pick up the pieces after their loved ones were taken from them by crimes that could have been prevented. The Shane Jones Act represents a turning point, finally holding local government accountable when they fail to enforce immigration law. The bill outlines a new structure for families to sue local governments over the death of a loved one, but only if an illegal immigrant was found to be responsible. It also proposes a $10,000 fine for out-of-compliance law enforcement agencies that would go towards the compensation for the grieving families. Jacks insisted that the current immigration laws in Florida require that law enforcement agencies collaborate with federal immigration enforcement officers. So there is an update on that. So yesterday we talked a little bit about the new big scandal, the media and those on the left that are outraged, well, 6 of one, half dozen of another, but they're outraged that Trump is building the ballroom at the White House. Even though you and I, the taxpayers, did not put up any of the money, not our money, privately funded, they're outraged, and they're using those photos, which I think we can all admit are a little startling at first to see construction on the White House. They're using those to suggest, again, because it's Trump, something nefarious, that he has no right to be doing this. Now we know historically there's been example after example of presidents who have in some way renovated the White House. This is all part of the facade in the East Wing. It's not a part of the original building. Senator Chris Murphy from Connecticut, I think you know Chris Murphy, Democrat, he was on MSNBC's All In. And he said, in the host, Chris Hayes, said, in the grand scheme of everything that is being done, and particularly in the context of these, what appears to all the world to be like extrajudicial killings, the knocking down of the East Wing is not like anywhere near as morally significant. But I wonder if you had the same I just have encountered for myself and other people. There was really something visceral about those images that landed. I wonder if you or other colleagues or other people you're talking to have had that same reaction. That's what you call a softball question. I guess the extrajudicial killings is, again, sticking up for the drug cartels, if I'm understanding that section of the question right. And then saying, I had a visceral reaction that upset me. Did you feel the same way? Well, Murphy's never going to say no. He says, well, listen, there's a lot of history that has taken place in the East Wing. And it was just destroyed without any conversation in the American public, without any consent of Congress. It was absolutely illegal. And yeah, that the visual is powerful because you are essentially watching the destruction of the rule of law happen as those walls come down. So it's illegal. Maybe there'll be more investigations. Old habits die hard for Democrats. It's just a symbol about how cavalier he is about every single day acting in new and illegal ways. That's the story with the killings in the Caribbean as well. The president just doesn't believe that any law applies to him, that he can destroy federal property, that he can steal from American citizens, that he can kill with impunity, that he can throw anyone in jail. We are now living in a functional democracy. We are no longer living in a functioning democracy any longer. It is not too late to save it, but it's just important to acknowledge that we aren't on the precipice of losing our democracy. That we are on the precipice of losing our democracy. We are losing it every single day. We are not a functional nation with a rule of law any longer. And those toppled walls in the East Wing are a pretty stark reminder of that. Wow, talk about hyperbole. This goes to show you kind of, I know the term is used, Trump derangement syndrome. But my goodness, a renovation to the White House. Well, let's talk about the irony of it all. Did you see that Hillary Clinton, because again, this is the big topic amongst kind of liberal elites, because they think it, I guess because of the visual there, they think it's going to be symbolic of his taking down our democracy. So Hillary Clinton went on X and she posted, it's not his house, it's our house. Let me try that again. It's not his house, it's your house, and he's destroying it. Well, social media, as it is wont to do, quickly pointed out the Clintons' history and how they treated the executive mansion, not necessarily with reverence when they occupied it. Writer Mark Hemingway wrote, yes, between selling nights in the Lincoln bedroom to donors and her husband's tutelage of the interns in the Oval Office, if anyone treated the White House as sacred, it was the Clintons, saying sarcastically. He was alluding to the infamous scandal, of course, Monica Lewinsky. Alex Pfeiffer, a former White House staffer, said a Clinton would never defile the White House. Several others noted, if you recall, if you're a student of history, that the Clintons took $28,000 in furnishing that belonged to the White House's permanent collection and hundreds of thousands of dollars in flatware when Bill left office back in 2001. David Harsani, who we've quoted numerous times on this program, saying, I remember when the Clintons stole the people's furniture and tableware. Now, of course, many presidents have put their personal touches on the historic property, and the Clintons weren't any exception. They did a renovation in 1993. The East Wing facade is just that, of a facade, said journalist Selena Zito, not part of the original structure and added in 1942 per Franklin D. Roosevelt. The president's son, Eric Trump, indicated that the public will be pleased with the renovation once it's completed, saying the ballroom will be spectacular, unlike your work in Haiti, responding directly to Hillary Clinton. So again, not on the taxpayers' dime. White House spokesman Davis Ingle said to the Post, failed presidential candidate and former First Lady, crooked Hillary Clinton, stole furniture from the White House on her way out until she was forced to return it. Crooked Hillary is shameless and a total disgrace. Meanwhile, President Trump is restoring the White House to its proper glory for Americans to enjoy for generations to come, at no expense to the taxpayer, something we should all celebrate. Now, let me ask you this. Just a little mind game here. Am I running extremely late? I think I am, aren't I? Yeah, I'm running really late. Let me ask you the question. Do you think that the next, we'll say if, there's a next Democrat president, say if because the media is saying that democracy is destroyed, right? But if a Democrat wins the White House, how many Democrat presidents will it take before they tear down this ballroom, this renovation? Because if it's a quick Democrat win after Trump or maybe even after Vance or something like that, and the Trump derangement syndrome is still in full force, because it'll be whoever's next. It'll be J.D. Vance derangement syndrome. It'll be, because you can't keep fueling yourself on hate and just cut that back one day. You can't go through that detox easily. So I think that renovation is made unfortunately, I think very, very quickly. I think it's torn down. Your thoughts, though? We've got a couple other things when we come back. I'm trying to think. Yeah, we are running really late. I don't know what I was thinking. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking after this. As always, we thank our friends at Boss Security in Horseheads for bringing us a beautiful view of historic Market Street. Contact Boss Security today for all your business and home security needs. We are back, broadcasting live from the Hesselson's studio. A couple comments from viewers. Oh, thank you to the viewer who sent a photo from the renovation during Truman. It's pretty interesting to see that picture. Yeah, this isn't new, but the media and those elected leaders or commentators, they hope, they're banking on the fact that you don't know, right? How many times do they push something hoping that you don't know? It's just like they don't want you to know that it takes Democrats to open up the government because there's a 60 vote filibuster. And they want you to believe, and I've talked about this reporting numerous times over and over again, where they'll say, well, the Republicans have the House and the Senate and the White House, and they can't keep the government open. It's just fabrication. Coming from a different viewer, the White House ballroom, I guess, the No Kings rallies failed. I hear that it's fortified with automatic gun turrets in the towers of the America First Castle. He is building a military arch. Also, it will contain a Patriot missile battery to protect the castle. Long live the king. Thank you there. Comment from a different viewer. Democrats will never tear down the Trump ballroom. It will be a political contribution cash cow. Oh, good point. Allowing them to bring in ever larger crowds of leftist donors and foreign fat cats by the busload to put the squeeze on them on an industrial scale. That's a good point. But boy, there's going to be something about the optics of it. I just see that being, especially perhaps in the primary, being a campaign promise that we are going, never mind that it was paid for, that'll be one of their excuses, it was paid for by private donations, not taxpayers, so we're not wasting their money, we're wasting these people beholden to Trump or whatever they'll say. I don't know. I got a weird feeling. I'm not going to mark it in my calendar or anything like that, but I do have a feeling that that will be an issue in the future. Okay, quickly, because I am running late and I apologize. A Senate Republican plans to launch a hearing to put political violence from the left under the microscope. Senator Eric Schmidt from Missouri plans to announce an upcoming hearing dubbed Political Violent Attacks, a Threat to Our Constitutional Order, to examine the origins of political violence and extremism that he argued stem largely from the Democratic side of the political spectrum. He chairs the Senate Judiciary Subcommittee on the Constitution and plans to hold the hearing on October the 28th and will examine the cross-section of the First Amendment and political violence, specifically in the wake of the assassination of Charlie Kirk. Saying the tragic assassination of Charlie Kirk, I've combined the next two words. Let me try that again. The tragic assassination of Charlie Kirk shook the nation to its core, and it was the latest in a long list of examples of left-wing political violence. Many of these attacks come while Americans are exercising constitutionally protected core political speech. So there we are. This ties in with the No Kings rally. We've seen some outrageous things that were done at the No Kings rally. Not everywhere, but we saw the elementary school teacher emulating Charlie Kirk getting shot. We saw that in some area, they say largely peaceful. And I do think it was largely peaceful. There were examples where it was not. But Ted Cruz, I'm going to leave on this question, and we're going to talk a little bit more about it when we come back. But Ted Cruz begs, this coming from the Daily Beast, the far-left Daily Beast, but we'll get into more specifics. He begs the GOP to take political peril seriously after the anti-Trump protests. We'll tell you about that in just a moment, but I do already have to take a break because I went on that long tangent earlier. So stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking after this. The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam brought to you by Boss Security and Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. We are back, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. So, Ted Cruz, and this is from the Daily Beast, so take it with a grain of salt. They say, and he's quoted here, Ted Cruz said, unquestionably, we should take political peril seriously. This is in reference to the No Kings rally, and he was telling this to Bloomberg Television. There is a lot of energy, there's a lot of anger on the left, and elections can be dangerous when one side is mobilized and angry. Energized voters show up to vote, and I do worry about just ordinary voters who are happy or complacent, who say, gosh, Trump won, things are good, I don't need to show up and vote. There's no doubt if one side shows up and the other doesn't, that leads to a bad election. Somehow the Daily Beast is trying to spin that to suggest he's open. Let me read the exact word. It's not the first time Cruz has openly criticized the MAGA administration. What was he criticizing about Trump there? He's just saying, and I agree with Ted Cruz, by the way, you got to keep in mind all of this. I mean, there's going to be a lot of factors for the midterms next year. And if there is energy on one side and not the other, and I think the media wants Trump supporters to be complacent, because it plays to their benefit. So, of course, you've got to be mindful of this. But how is that him going against MAGA? Now, I know they've been trying to paint this narrative that Cruz is setting up a potential for a run for president. I think that'd be very difficult against a J.D. Vance or even a Marco Rubio at this point. I think that was not an attack on MAGA or the president whatsoever. But they're trying to compare him to Marjorie Taylor Greene, which, again, I think speaks volumes about the decisions that Marjorie Taylor Greene has been making. About what she has to say. Oh, we got a fly in here. That's going to be a nightmare. But according to CNN, Republicans have spent many days trying to marginalize the massive anti-Trump No Kings rally held across the country over the weekend. They argue the people involved were extremists and even predicted they would be violent, which turned out not to be true. This is CNN. They've claimed that protesters hate America and that they've argued that the No Kings message itself is nonsensical, given President Trump is a democratically elected president who sometimes works with Congress. Trump said Sunday that the people were not representative of this country. He and his team have taken to mockingly posting memes and AI videos, including one that we all know about. House Speaker Mike Johnson added Monday night on Fox News that the protesters' messages were completely the opposite of what America was founded upon. Now this is from CNN. New polling, though, reinforces how much the thrust of the No Kings message has resonated with much of the American public. Boy, I wish the Tea Party would have ever got any kind of reviews, let alone glowing reviews like this. They laughed, mocked, ridiculed the Tea Party in the media. Do you remember when they tried to fabricate people attending? I remember a story where someone showed up in a Klan outfit, and that person was a Democrat, and he said he was trying to expose the Tea Party for what they were, and the media ran with that as if that was okay. So the Democrat came in with that, but because they were trying to show the message of the Tea Party somehow being racist, that he somehow proved the message. You try to figure out, but that's the media. Now we get nothing but glowing reviews of the No Kings rally, to the point, folks, where they are taking the organizers' word on how many people were involved. That, of course, was never done at a Tea Party rally, or nor is it done in most circumstances. So the organizers of the No Kings rally say, oh yeah, 7 million people. And now that is being quoted by from the media, as if it were gospel. You don't think they might have bumped those numbers up a little bit? Or I pointed to the fact, anecdotally, we saw here locally, you have an Elmira rally and a Corning rally where you could attend both. So those numbers were counted for both. Now, is that a small number compared to 7 million? Of course. But to just accept them at their word. But a survey from the Public Religion Research Institute gave people two options. One was that Trump is a, quote, potentially dangerous dictator whose power should be limited before he destroys democracy. The other was that he's, quote, strong leader who should be given the power he needs to restore American greatness. Americans chose the dictator option by a strong margin, 56 to 41%. And notably, the margin was nearly doubled since April. Let me ask, do you think this poll was taken fairly and in good faith? If that's the question, and you got 56% to say that Trump, just knee-jerk, that Trump is a dictator, do you think perhaps that might have been skewed towards Democrats being asked questions? The same poll showed 54% majority sided with the view that Trump is waging an assault on constitutional balances and the rule of law. It's possible to oversell poll numbers like this, given people binary choices can inflate numbers by making people choose one extreme or another. People who don't like Trump but don't think he's a dictator might feel compelled to choose the dictator option to avoid endorsing a man they don't like. But tellingly, the poll also asked people about the strength of their views. Fully 45% of Americans said they strongly agreed Trump was a dangerous dictator, and 43% strongly agreed that he was waging an assault on checks and balances and the rule of law. Anyway, these are, to put it mildly, not insignificant numbers. Say what you will about elements of the No Kings rally. This polling suggests the thrust of the demonstrations hardly appears ridiculous to a majority of Americans. And this is merely the latest indicator that huge numbers of Americans have such concerns. There you are. I'm not going to go through, because they go through more far-left polling. But how about this? It might be tempting to look at these numbers and think, well, it's just partisan. A decade ago, many Republicans accused Barack Obama of acting like a king, too. And what about when Joe Biden tried to work around a Supreme Court ruling invalidating his move on student loans? But Americans clearly see a difference with Trump. For one, in that last poll mentioned, only about 2 in 10 voters said Trump's then opponent, Kamala Harris, was a fascist, less than half of Trump's number. I don't know. Why am I reading numbers? All of this suggests Americans, or at least a majority of them, see something extraordinary happening right now. Republicans can try to dismiss the No Kings rallies all they want, but they're speaking to something that's real. Let me say that again. They're speaking to something that's very real to lots of people. So, again, glowing reviews for the No Kings rally. I don't think I think Republicans should take it seriously. I don't think they should take it as seriously as CNN just took it. But I do think it's important to follow trends or to follow where, because remember, midterms, to the point that Ted Cruz is making, if we're doing well and people say, well, we got Trump in there, everything's good, we'll worry about the rest later. You're going to have nonstop impeachment if Democrats get back in there. It's going to be investigation and quote-unquote scandal after scandal. I mean, Chris Murphy's saying that renovating the White House is illegal. Will they try to impeach him for that? Yes. Would not surprise me. But we just go to those glowing pieces. It's a little bit, it shows you the media bias. Just like, yeah, let's do it. Jen Psaki on MSNBC. This is disgusting. She was on a podcast and she suggested that J.D. Vance was scarier than President Donald Trump in some regards, and that Usha Vance may feel the same way. So again, attacking, which this is a common trend in the Democrat Party. They did it during the election. We're saying Trump didn't have strong, independent women around him. She is suggesting that Usha Vance can't make up her own mind and is scared of her husband. I think the little Manchurian candidate, J.D. Vance, wants to be president more than anything else. I always wonder what's going on in the mind of his wife. Like, are you okay? Please blink 4 times. We'll come over here. We'll save you. That is how much hatred there is for Trump and his administration. That Psaki, I think she thinks she's being funny, but she can't see a scenario where someone could support anything that they do, even the vice president's wife. So she must be in some kind of danger. And they need Jen Psaki to be their savior, that will come over and save you. Continuing, and that he's willing to do anything to get there, meaning the White House. And your whole iteration you just outlined, I mean, he's scarier in certain ways, in some ways, and he's young and ambitious and agile in the sense that he's a chameleon who makes himself whatever he thinks the audience wants to hear from him. This is just a warning, folks. When she says he's scarier, you know how they always say Trump is the worst ever? The next Republican that runs is going to be the worst ever, going to be more hated than Trump. They did this with George W. Bush. Remember how much they hated Bush? And then when Trump came around, it was, wow, boy, we miss those George W. Bush. He was reasonable. But this guy is really scary. They're going to do the same thing. Yeah, Trump was bad, but this guy's even worse. They're so predictable, folks. The podcast episode's description also referenced this joke that apparently they loved. Usha Vance, please blink twice if you need help. Even if the original joke was blink 4 times if you need help. So they couldn't even get their quote-unquote joke right. Many Twitter users call it disgusting and vile to go after their marriage and suggesting someone was worse than the, quote, worse than Hitler Trump, right? That's what they always say. Joe Concha calling Jen Psaki not a good person at all. Unhinged Jen Psaki is now smearing J.D. Vance, suggesting that his wife Usha wants to leave her husband and offers to save her. She also thinks J.D. Vance is scarier than Donald Trump. MSNBC should be ashamed to pay her salary. Have you ever noticed that, though? There's always, they do it with Melania, too. That's how much they hate Republicans, where they'll say, she can't actually be happy. She must hate living with Trump. She can't really love this man. Or Usha must hate JD and just feels unsafe. Amy Curtis said, this is an absolutely vile thing to say. Usha Vance is happily married. She made a vow to JD, and those words mean something. It's also an insult to women who are in actual bad marriages. Stephen Chung, the White House Director of Communications, said Jen Psaki must be transferring her own personal issues onto others. Psaki is a dumb, and a cuss word, who has no comprehension of the truth and has to overcompensate for her lack of talent by saying untrue things. Circle back on that, moron. Federal senior legal correspondent Margaret Cleveland said, I must admit the pivot to J.D. Vance is worse than Hitler started earlier than I anticipated. That is going to be the trend. It's what we're used to, right? Because once Trump's out and J.D. Vance is running, they're going to say, well, Trump was bad, but this guy is even worse. So they've started it already. We got to take a short break. When we come back, we're going to get to New York State issues. Keep those waves, keep those comments coming in. Don't forget, Sheriff Schrom will be joining us in the 7 o'clock hour, so stay with us. We'll be right back. The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. We are back broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio, wrapping up our number 1. Let's go to some viewer comments. Harry S. Truman gutted the White House in 1948. Teddy Roosevelt built the West Wing. FDR built a swimming pool when he added the East Wing. Obama added a basketball court. Yeah, didn't they change? I think it was changed the tennis courts to basketball, I believe. I think I read that yesterday. Nixon built a bowling alley. Last year, it is reported the government rented several large tents for large gatherings, costing over $1 million. All of the items were paid by tax dollars. Trump is adding a ballroom paid for by private donations, and that's a very good point. Trump had talked about that. The cost of holding these lavish events that you do at the White House and I'm sure they don't rent. I don't know if that's the right word. Probably something we own at this point. No, maybe they do. It's the government. Maybe we do actually keep paying exorbitant rental prices on the tents. But yeah, I mean, there is a cost to that. So I think in the long run, there'll be future presidents that are very glad it's happening. But right now, you have those on the left that have to make political hay over anything that Donald Trump does. Everything has to be illegal. Everything has to be a scandal. And Chris Murphy just proved it. With the embarrassing way he handled it, and Hillary Clinton, of anybody to say that. Comment from a different viewer. Polls are only as good as your target pollsters. For example, if CNN takes a poll, they're going to get a left vote. Fox will probably get more of a right vote. I think unless the results correspond more with the presidential election results, the more accurate the poll will be. I don't pay much attention to polls anymore anyway. They're like AI nowadays. Now you can't trust all videos. No, you cannot trust all videos. I'm sure you've seen some of that on Facebook and elsewhere if you're on social media. But I haven't accepted polls for quite some time. We read them here occasionally, but they're so biased that they're antiquated the way that they're done. How many people are answering their phones of unsolicited numbers? How many people want to take the time out to tell, and how many people are scared to tell their political views? Let's face it, at a time when conservatives are being attacked, are people going to say, yeah, I support Trump? That's why very often, and we talked about it on this program, when it comes to the poll numbers of Donald Trump before the presidential election, that's both times, 2016 and 2024, the poll numbers were so wrong because people didn't want to take the chance of saying where they stood on the issue of Trump. Because if they were a Trump supporter, their family could disown them, their marriage could crumble, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't agree with polls 9 times out of 10 anyway, but you're right. Is that a poll? So you're right. That easy to use to be biased if you want to be. Okay. Comment from a different viewer. Funny how the Democrats portray Usha Vance. The media fawned over the way she looked at JD during the swearing in ceremony. Yeah, they've handled, well, they don't like to handle, it's quite sexist if we're being honest, the way that they handle Republican presidents and vice presidents, their wives. Look at how disgusting they've been to Melania Trump from day one. I mean, here you have a former model who doesn't appear on any magazines like Dr. Jill did, like Michelle did. They have been from day one criticizing or attacking her, suggesting that she wants to divorce Donald Trump, that she hates it at the White House, she hates Trump. Now we're getting the same, and it's a little early yet, but we're seeing it now. Jen Psaki is laying down the groundwork that J.D. Vance is worse than Trump, which isn't. There's nothing worse than Trump, according to the No Kings rally and according to your party. And now you're laying the groundwork that Usha Vance isn't happy in her marriage. It really is. It's despicable, and I think whoever said it, disgusting. Okay. We've got to take a break and wrap up our number 1. Hard to believe. Coming up in the next hour, Sheriff Bill Schrom's going to be our guest. We haven't talked to him in a while. I'm looking forward to that. So stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking after this. And we welcome you to hour number 2 of Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom. I'm so glad that you've joined us this morning. We've got some viewer comments. We're going to reread Karen's quote of the week this morning. Then we're going to get into New York State issues. Mainly, as a reminder, the last debate, one of only 2, but the last debate between the mayoral candidates is tonight. And that is at 7 o'clock. All right, viewer comments. This viewer calls in and says, I'm so sick of seeing Hillary and Obama come out when their time is up. Just give it up. My father was a World War II vet, and I was taught first comes God, second comes country, and third comes family, because without the first 2, you can't have the third. Very nice. Thank you, sir. All right, comment from a different viewer. Good morning, Frank. Good morning. I asked yesterday why a Republican wasn't running for mayor in New York City. Who knew the other candidate was a Republican? Am I the only person not knowing that? I was surprised that he's running such a low-key campaign for an important job as mayor. He could have been another amazing Giuliani if he had fought harder for it. A couple things to dissect there. One reason you may not have known, the media didn't give him a lot of coverage to begin with. And then there's throughout this whole race until now when they want him to drop out because Cuomo couldn't do his due diligence and actually work hard to win the primary. So now they want to, quote unquote, take Sliwa's votes, which I don't think translates, if I'm being honest. I don't see a lot of Republicans that I know, that I've talked to, that could ever vote for Andrew Cuomo, even if there wasn't a Republican in the race. I think there may also be the confusion because of Eric Adams now dropping out of the race, but because of some of his we'll say partnering with Republicans a little bit more than normal. So I could see why, and there was a talk at one time of him actually switching to the Republican Party. So I can understand the confusion or maybe lack of information on Sliwa because the main focus has been on Mamdani and Cuomo. So I want to kick yourself, but I don't think he could. Giuliani, boy, I don't know. The days of a Giuliani winning in New York City, I think maybe long gone. I don't want to sound jaded, but when they're overwhelmingly looking like anyway, they're going to support an avowed socialist. But I understand what you're saying. Curtis Sliwa has been active in kind of the political scene for a very long time. So I think it wasn't his lack of working. Even the people that I've read, like the New York Post and others who want him to drop out to hopefully, in their minds, get more votes for Cuomo, even they have admitted that he is working very, very hard. But you got to remember, and this is something to remember too with Republicans in general, when they run for statewide or they run for a big race like this in New York City, it's not that they're not working hard, it's that they don't get the coverage. So when you'll see maybe in the past, I'm not going to name any names, but when we had a Republican gubernatorial candidate, people say, I'm not seeing him anywhere. What's he doing? When's he going to come out and really go after it? That he is. He's just not getting the coverage. He's not getting, and that's why Elise Stefanik can be something a lot different, because she has the national name recognition where she has the ties to Trump. So she could actually get the coverage that others won't. Again, I'm not going to name names, but I remember, and this has happened numerous times, where the Republican gubernatorial candidate back when I was in radio would ask day before Election Day if they could be on the show Election Day to make one last pitch. And my thought was, you shouldn't have to be on upstate New York on my show. Why can't you be in New York City or wherever? It's because they know they won't get the coverage there. Again, I think Elise Stefanik's different. I think that's what Curtis Sliwa is dealing with. He's not getting the coverage, and what he does is mocking, in many instances, ridiculing him, asking him to drop out. So, long tangent on my part, but I hope that all made sense. If people disagree, write in. So Karen wrote in, and this is very apropos for talking about the mayor's race. Her quote of the week is not just, it's particularly for New York City voters, but it's not just for them. It's anytime a candidate is claiming their brand of socialism will be different. So Karen's quote of the week comes with a man very familiar with the topic, Vladimir Lenin, saying, quote, the goal of socialism is communism. Thank you, Karen. We always appreciate the quote of the week. Look forward to it, as a matter of fact. Okay, before we get to the mayor's race, I had to bring this to your attention because we've talked about this in the past. We talked about the push to end regents here in New York, the regents degree. The Post editorial brings this to our attention, saying, proving once again that children's interests are the last thing they care about, New York State's educrats are pushing to make math instruction less effective. State Education Commissioner Betsy Rosa and company are moving to recommend that teachers stop giving timed math quizzes lest they overstress students. I guess saying that we all have, I know people say that calculators on our phones. Well, look what happens when we had the Amazon Web Service go out for a half a day and the outrage and the near rioting in the street. So what happens, heaven forbid, if our grid gets overpowered because we're pushing these green energy policies too quickly, or definitely, heaven forbid, if China wages that kind of attack on our grid and you don't have your phones, you're probably going to want to know math. So they're saying, well, it's making the kids too stressed. Timed math quizzes. Now it is different because they're not allowed to have cell phones. We all know the story of Frankie Focus, but still, and a lot of times in these schools, you still use a calculator. So quizzes make some kids anxious, so they must go for all students, no matter what the benefits. That is what we're learning. It's again, Betsy Rosa, State Education Commissioner. We have to get rid of timed math quizzes. She plainly doesn't care that Empire State kids are still doing math below pre-pandemic levels and lost ground on the latest gold standard national exams. Worse, the proficiency gap is widening for the lowest performing students, especially minority ones. As SUNY Albany professor Benjamin Solomon rightly says, the reason kids, quote, have math anxiety is because they're taking the test. It's because they're bad at math. That is, the anxiety is a symptom of they've gotten poor instruction in math. Now, he's one of 200 math academics who signed a letter calling on Rosa to rescind the rotten math guidance. Back in 2021, the Biden Education Department published a teacher's guide that recommended regular timed activities to help kids build their command of addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. I know I'm running fast, sorry. Timed activities help improve memory, the way people playing pepper in baseball improves back control, hand-eye coordination, and quickness. It's that kind of brain muscle memory training that charter schools engage in to great success. Though charters enroll just 15% of all city public school students, roughly half of the 100 top performing schools on state math tests are charters. Yet, the state education department won't ever suggest any guidance that adopts those excellent schools' quote best practices, as the Pataki-era charter law prescribes. This new math guidance is just another step on the road toward Rosa and Company's obvious goal of killing all state proficiency exams. New York needs a rebellion against the educrats who are working to destroy education. I wanted to bring that to your attention because I do think we've talked about the education system a lot and how New York is handling that education system. All right. The debate between the mayoral candidates is tonight at 7 o'clock. It runs from 7 to 8:30. Will you be watching? This is the last mayoral debate. Some are wondering if it might be Andrew Cuomo's last debate ever. Well, I don't think that. So Cuomo's attacking Mamdani more, and people are calling for Curtis Sliwa to drop out. What is Cuomo's strategy? His last debate performance, nothing special. And if you recall Sliwa out there, he's not just going after Mamdani. He's willing to go after Cuomo. So Cuomo's in a kind of a predicament there. And that's maybe one of the reasons why he did not do that great in the last debate. But this is his last chance. But he did get a glowing endorsement. Former Governor Andrew Cuomo was endorsed yesterday by recent inmate George Santos, announcing Tuesday that he's backing former Governor Andrew Cuomo over Zohran Mamdani. Santos posted, quote, "I pray that God will illuminate the mind of Republican Curtis Sliwa to step aside and work with Cuomo to save New York City from Marxism and Sharia disaster." Now, Santos's endorsement comes as Hakeem Jeffries, the House Minority Leader, and Schumer, the Senate Majority Leader, both from New York, have for weeks dodged questions on whether they will endorse Mamdani, a self-described Democratic socialist. But the Republican Santos said it's time to come together against Mamdani. It's time to put our personal needs aside and unite for the greater good of the largest city in the country. Andrew Cuomo extended an offer of partnership to Curtis and form a coalition to save New York. But within 2 hours after being hit with some social media blowback, Santos pleadingly posted another message saying, "Please don't shoot me down and educate me on what I've missed. Clearly, I've been out of the picture, and I'm very aware that Cuomo is a horrible person," but said his decision is making the endorsing was based on polling, yada, yada, yada. All right, for whatever that's worth. Let's take a break. We've got one other quick segment, and then we are going to hear from our good friend, Chemung County Sheriff Bill Schrom. That's coming up here in just a little bit. Tomorrow on the program, running for our Elmira City Court Judge, Jordan York. He'll be joining us, as well as a representative from Corning, as they have their Days of Incandescence celebration starting tomorrow. So we'll learn all about that. And then on Friday, Greg Tranter. This is for football fans in general, but definitely Bills fans. He is a super fan, and I'm not talking about the guy who jumps through the tables pre-gaming. I'm talking he donated 108,000 artifacts to the Buffalo Museum based on Buffalo Bills history. So kind of maybe a different level there. He's going to be joining us. He's got a new book coming out, and that's just in time, our interview that is, just in time for the Big Fox coverage of the Bills at the Panthers, or Bills versus the Panthers, I think. I'm not sure where it's being played. But that is going to be on Fox this Sunday at 1 o'clock. But we got to take a break. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking after this. The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. An ominous look to our roof cam this morning with those clouds. Thank you for joining us. Coming up in just a minute, we got to make this segment quick. Coming up in just a minute, we're going to be talking with Sheriff Schrom, so make sure you stay tuned. Comment from a viewer, I thought, but it did not paste. There we go. For the Democrat stenographers in the New York press corps, anyone remember Hochul's congestion tax? Hochul before the election, no congestion tax. Hochul after the election, taxed them into oblivion. Hochul is laying the groundwork to tax upstate to try to shore up the grossly mismanaged and failing MTA. Yeah, she obviously, that was so crystal clear what she was doing with the congestion tax. It's the same reason why I haven't received mine yet. Did you receive yours, the inflation rebate or whatever it's called, inflation rebate check? I have not received mine yet, but I know it's supposed to be due right around election season. All right, so again, the mayoral race is headed to a debate tonight. Weird way of wording that. Tonight starts at 7 to 8:30. Will you be watching? Andrew Cuomo going on the attack against Mamdani. If he only had this kind of oomph behind him in the primary, but his ego and his cockiness made him think that he was going to win it easily. So he did not properly run in the primary. He just kind of sat back and thought he was going to win it. He did not. He got destroyed. The 34-year-old Queens State Assemblyman, Zohran Mamdani, leading City Hall would be like stepping into the ring with Mike Tyson when he was in his prime and you've never boxed before. But you'll figure it out along the way, said Governor Cuomo, former Governor Cuomo, about Zohran Mamdani. This is New York City. You have to know what you're doing. There's a level of qualification. Is this right? Cuomo? Because he made that reference because it was a podcast with Logan Paul, who's kind of a boxer or something. I don't know. Just think about it. And it's life or death. If you don't make the right call, people die. He also said he has not managed more than 5 people. He's never had a real job. He comes from wealth. His mother's a very successful film director, grew up in Uganda, in a palace, basically, in Uganda, moved to Manhattan, grew up in a West Side penthouse, went to private school, $60,000 a year, and Bowdoin College. He is the child of wealth, never had to work, never did work, never had a real job, and plays politics, and ran for the state assembly and won. There you are. But there is a piece by Paul Kaufman, we got to take a break, who said, Andrew Cuomo will not be a good mayor. They're trying to present it as he would be a good mayor. He said, is it better to be loved or feared? For New Yorkers, the choice is clear. Andrew Cuomo will not be a good mayor. Weigh in on this, but we've got the sheriff coming up. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking. The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom. We are broadcasting from the Hesselson studio, and in that studio, Sheriff, it's great to have you back.
Well, thanks for having me back.
Nice
to see you.
We've got so much to talk about. But first, I saw this in the New York Post yesterday, and it's something that I know you're going to be passionate about. They write at the Post, raise the age is ruining the lives of New York's kids. I don't think people realize how serious an issue is with raise the age.
They have no idea.
Yeah.
Younger kids are getting recruited to engage in a lot more dangerous activity. Right. Just because they know the consequences aren't near as severe as an adult.
Yeah.
So these kids are getting recruited young. They're getting involved in very violent crimes. We're just starting a trial this week of a homicide from last year. It was a 17-year-old executed another kid at a 21st birthday party. A majority of the kids in attendance there were between the ages of like 13 and 20. 3 of the kids that were involved in a shooting that drove from there, and the one that was involved in it, were all under the age of 18. It's just, it's crazy. It's dangerous, and
they've tied your hands so much that you can't do anything about it. I mean, 13 to 20. How are they even hanging out with each other?
Well, there's the other part of it.
Yeah.
We're the parents in this whole thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah. How is a 13-year-old kid at a 21st birthday?
Yeah.
It's inexcusable, and it's an issue with the parenting.
And how does this, because this is something I've been talking about recently on the program with the SROs, which is such an amazing program. How does that work when it comes to these younger people?
Yeah, so you're talking about tying hands.
Yeah.
Especially at the high school level. There's your kids that that are problem kids. Mm-hmm. Back in the day, the SROs knew when they turned 16.
Yeah.
They knew that they'd have a little bit more bite behind the bark. Now they don't. These kids know it, and they will push the envelope to the nth degree. Extremely disrespectful. They're not worried about anything they do.
There's no repercussions.
There's none. The most you can do is push them into youth court.
Yeah.
Youth court's voluntary. If the kid doesn't want to go, or the parents don't want to go, guess what? He's not going.
What's the chances they want to go?
Yeah, none of them are going to go.
No.
So it's very frustrating for the SROs and certainly the school officials as well. They don't want those kids in there if they don't need to be there. So
no, and I just think it's people again aren't aware of it. I know in New York City they were showing it's almost like out of Charles Dickens, right? Where you have these kids were going into these bars and pickpocketing and all that, and when they're getting yelled at, they say, "Call the cops.
Yeah.
Nothing's going to happen."
Yeah, what are you gonna do?
I mean, they're kids. They know how to skirt the rules,
Sure.
And now you've got quote unquote grown-ups that are encouraging them to go this direction because there's no repercussions and they're making gang money.
They're encouraging and they're recruiting.
Yeah.
They know the kids to pull into it. They give them the heavy tasks to carry out, and they sit back and reap the benefits.
It's unbelievable. And,
Yeah.
but it's a larger picture of Albany, right, of New
Sure.
York, what we're dealing with. We're going to talk about the Attorney General's office here in just a moment, but I do want to mention bail reform because it seems like with Raise the Age around July 4th, there was so much issue. And then every once in a while, there'll be talks of reforming bail reform. Nothing's going to come from it, though.
No, they just will not. They just won't take the right steps to correct a bad decision.
No.
It continues to plague us. It continues to plague everybody in law enforcement in the state. We just had a woman the other day. It's 3 days in a row. Same place, same problems. You bring her down. She's in and out within an hour, and we're back there the next day. It's a revolving door. Extremely frustrating. And I've said this before, and I think a key component that people miss on this. If we have a person that's addicted to drugs or alcohol, and you engage them in a negative context of some kind of law that they broke, but they're not going to be held accountable, or they're going to be released immediately. Before that happened, if we were able to put bail on them, get them in the jail, even if it was for a few days,
Right.
it cleared their heads, it got them down off of that high that they're on, gave them an opportunity to think through things and maybe go into a different direction. Now, they're in and out so quick, they don't even have time to sober up, and they go right back to where they came from, engaged in the same type of behavior. Just never ending.
It's got to be so frustrating from a morale standpoint in the sheriff's office, because I know it sounds cliche, people say this a lot, but the ink isn't even dry on the paperwork that you have to do when these people are out.
Absolutely. Keeping the young men and women of the agency motivated and say, listen, all we can do is our job, and let the process play out the way it's going to play out. We can't control what we can't control.
But I'm glad that you're talking about it, because I don't think people realize how much raise the age or bail reform affects us locally. They think it's a New York City issue.
No, it is 100% across the state. Nobody's exempt from it.
And I hinted towards talking about the Attorney General's office. What's your interaction? Because obviously the AG's making a lot of news lately.
Yeah.
What's the interaction with you and the Sheriff's Department?
It has been nothing but negative with regard to the manner in which they evaluate any incidents law enforcement is involved in. We had 2 officers that were directly involved in an officer-involved shooting that resulted in an individual's death a couple years ago. And of course, the AG's office is going to come in and investigate that, as you would expect them to, which is aside from anything else that we do internally. But at the end, instead of saying that the actions of the officers were appropriate, justifiable, whatever the verbiage could be, they don't do that. No. They basically say, well, we couldn't find anything to hold them criminally accountable, so therefore we're going to close this. I mean, the actual verbiage in the last one that we had was, therefore, based on the law and the evidence, the Attorney General would not be able to prove at a trial beyond a reasonable doubt that the officers were not justified in their use of deadly force pursuant to New York State law, section 3530. That's
so they leave a cloud over it.
Yeah, it's like, well, we tried.
Yeah,
but we couldn't find anything.
We wanted
really,
this outcome.
Exactly.
Isn't that horrible?
It is. It sends a horrible message to law enforcement. It makes people extremely gun shy. You get cops now second guessing themselves when they're in those types of situations, which is very dangerous. If they hesitate too long, they're going to be on the receiving end of that deadly physical force. So it's very, very frustrating. And we're hoping that a change will be forthcoming, and we'll get somebody in there that's more law enforcement friendly.
Well, and isn't that the problem? Because it's the Attorney General, it's Albany in general, that we are, unfortunately, this is the state that we're living in, where it's not friendly to law enforcement. They haven't learned. I mean, let's face it, we got a guy that looks like he's going to be mayor in New York City that called for defunding the police.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, and the insulting things he said about police. So it's just, the reason why it's important to focus on this is so people realize what we're dealing with at that level.
And just to take that a step further before you switch gears, which people might not understand, is these investigations apply to police officers that are off duty.
Right.
They don't even have to be on the job in the course of their duty. 2 years ago, we had a deputy pulled over a motorcycle on West Water Street in the town of Elmira. As he's approaching the bike does a U-turn and starts going the wrong way in the one-way street at a high rate of speed. The deputy knew enough not to pursue.
Of course.
Too dangerous. So he doesn't. He cuts over to Church Street and was just going to run parallel. Well, as this bike accelerates, goes around a curve, he hits a car head-on that's coming just from a store, driving home.
Minding their own business.
Gets hit head-on.
Yeah.
The kid gets ejected from the bike and ends up dying on the side of the road.
Oh, my gosh.
The person driving the car was an off-duty senior parole officer. The AG's office initiates an investigation against this man because of his connection to law enforcement. Tell me what sense that makes.
It doesn't. It's a waste of time and our money.
Yeah.
This isn't free.
It sends the message that we're trying to find something on these people, whether they're on duty or off, and it's just a sad message to send.
No, and you're exactly right. They are sending a clear message that they're out to get law enforcement.
Absolutely.
I don't know how you could look at it any other way.
Have you found a partner?
Yeah, right. Have you found the morale because of these things is affected overall?
Absolutely. When anything of that level occurs, we just had the shooting 2 weeks ago with a trooper and a deputy that were down in Chemung. Our deputy was with the trooper at the time. It results in the young man's death. You know what they don't talk about? And if people could see the body camera footage, they don't see the compassion and the care and the urgency. These two law enforcement officers who were directly involved in the death of this young man, the efforts they take to try to save him.
Right.
I mean, immediately, with first aid and the compassion, the empathy, that doesn't get showcased.
No.
All we do is say, they shot an 18-year-old kid, so let's see if we can find something wrong with this.
Yeah. That's all it is.
Yeah.
And it's about going back to when they released the statement, there's a cloud over there. It's to put suspicion on you.
Yeah, 100%.
On all terms. Speaking, I don't even know how to segue from these things because there's so much to talk about here. But I did want to mention, because this was making the news rounds not that long ago, about the COPS grant application.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of confusion there in regards to ICE.
A lot.
Yeah.
So it's
I didn't need to tell you.
No, I'll tell you what happened is I teach at Corning 3 nights a week, and I was coming home on a Monday night, and one of the legislators called me, and he says, "Boy, you created quite a stir tonight at the legislative meeting." I said, "That's a neat trick, since I was at Corning teaching." And he said, "No, it was over your COPS grant." And I said, "Well, what was the issue with it?" It's a 19-page grant.
Okay.
Within that grant, there is one sentence that says the award recipient of this grant agrees to work with their law enforcement partners to include ICE. And that one sentence out of 19 pages just drew all this attention from a certain segment that interpreted that the monies that we were seeking was going to be used solely for looking for illegal immigrants in Chemung County, because it's such a big problem. So
always a suspicion, though.
Yeah,
it's going back to the suspicion.
But they always go to the negative.
Yeah.
And I told this legislator, I said, "Listen, if you guys had any questions or concerns, just you need to call me ahead of time. If I can't be there, I'll have somebody there that can answer those questions. My goal is to put it to bed as soon as you can." So I drafted an in-depth email to all the legislators to clarify it. I did have contact from some individuals from the Democratic Party that were very concerned about it. And to their credit, they invited me on a podcast, which I attended. And I think it was a good thing. Yeah. I think I put to bed a lot of misconception, misperception, and I said, it just goes a long way to have that communication. When in doubt, ask the questions.
Well, I know this happened in Steuben as well. Something like this gets blown out of proportion because the people that are going to automatically be opposed are the loudest, they're the most vocal.
Sure.
So that gets the most attention.
Oh yeah, 100%. And when I explained to him, I said, you got to understand that any federal monies that gets awarded to anybody, that could be the Department of Education, it can be the Emergency Management Office, it could be law enforcement, whoever.
Right.
Doesn't matter who it is, that verbiage is in there.
Oh, yeah.
Otherwise, you're not going to get the money.
Right, that's how it works.
And the other thing I explained to him, this is nothing new. Law enforcement has worked with their federal partners in my entire career.
Right.
I'm in my 36th year. Yeah. We've never not worked with them, to include ICE. But now it's at such the forefront, they automatically perceive that it's something negative, and that that's going to be our sole purpose is to go look for people. And we just don't have that problem in Chemung County. No. Our monies are allocated for something entirely different. I explained that to them, and I think everybody understood.
Seems like you have bigger fish to fry.
Yeah,
You've got other things to focus on.
You got you got shootings all the time in the city of Elmira. There's a lot of things we need to focus on.
I understand that, to change on a more positive note, the Elmira Police Department pensioners banquet, Mike Henry speaking of that. What do you think?
He did. So it was this past Sunday. The Elmira PBA did a phenomenal job with it. It's a banquet to honor retirees.
Oh, that's great.
They honor 2 retirees every year. They do a very nice presentation on them. And they had Mike Henry there, to speak on his candidacy for Attorney General. His message was well received by law enforcement because he sees the verbiage and the approach of the AG's office and what at least the perception of their goal is to kind of target and find fault with the police. And I think he's going to be a lot more user-friendly should he be successful in getting elected.
And boy, he's a hard worker.
Yeah.
He's everywhere.
Yeah, he is.
Because he's actually been he's been running for what, 4 years?
He has.
Close.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I will tell people, to encourage them to, you'll have an opportunity to see him at some
Sure.
point. And I'll get him on the show because it's next year, right?
Yes, it is.
So he's
next
already
year.
running.
He is. I mean, that's how proactive
You
he is
have
and
to.
how passionate he is about it and knows the importance of getting that message out.
That means in our area, he's been there twice within the last month. That's impressive.
That's a lot, especially for upstate New York. And,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, that's great.
I'm going to have to reach out to him and get him on the show. All right, a couple of things before we go. This happens everywhere, it seems like, but you had an uptick in phone scams.
Yeah, just it's never ending. It
Be
goes in
careful.
spurts.
I know.
Yeah, and you just try to remind people to use as much common sense as they can. If somebody is calling you and presenting you with this, grandiose opportunity, or pressuring you or threatening you, those should be red flags. They're getting very clever. They're using local phone numbers to make it sound or seem like the call is coming locally. They're using legitimate law enforcement names to say that you owe money for outstanding tickets, warrants, whatever the case may be. And it does seem legitimate. We found, though, when people push back, all of a sudden these people start getting vulgar.
Falls apart, yeah.
Yeah, and then there's your telltale that it's a total scam. But it's very difficult to track because a lot of these are happening in third countries. We just can't track them down. Just use good judgment.
And just know that you have never asked someone to pay their bail in gift cards.
No, nor do we call and tell them to pay their bail over the phone. That's a court issue, and that would be done in person.
Yes, of course. This was a little while ago, but Coffee with a Cop. How's that go? Is that fun?
Yeah, it's actually pretty cool. The city has taken the initiative on that.
Yeah.
They do like Coffee with the Chiefs, which is the Elmira Fire Department chief, Andy Mallow, chief of the Elmira Police Department, Chris Thorne, and they've included me over the past couple of years to join them. It's not a huge event, but you get maybe a dozen people there, and it's very intimate, and you have a lot of good, productive conversations.
And that's so important to combat the narrative of what you're, like we're talking about with the Attorney General or the media. It's great to have those one-on-one conversations.
And you find that people become more comfortable with approaching on those issues instead of just hearing about it and being afraid to ask, hey, is there any truth to this, or what's the real story? And
there's another great opportunity tonight. You're actually speaking, and this is just only, I think, the second month they're doing it. Scope is opening a chapter in Chemung County. It's about time. Scope's a great organization, and you're going to be the guest speaker. You ready for it?
I'm as ready as I can be.
They're great. They ask some tough questions, though.
They do.
They know their stuff.
The gentleman who reached out did give me some forewarning, and he gave me some questions to be prepared to answer. But I'm sure we'll do fine.
Oh, I'm sure.
And I look forward to meeting him.
And that is tonight at the Pine City Sportsman's Club, 187 Mountain View Drive in Pine City. That's at 6:30. So we're really encouraging them. I'm hoping that they can keep that chapter going.
Correct. Yeah, that'll be great.
And finally, I know last time we talked about this, and it seems like I talk with everybody that's on the show. How's hiring going?
Yeah, so, it's like anything. It goes in ebbs and flows. Right now we're 5 short in the jail, which isn't horrible.
Okay.
But when you're down anybody, it makes an impact. We're solid on the road patrol right now, which is good, and we're 1 down in our communication center. What becomes problematic for agencies is, when surrounding agencies start negotiating pretty good contracts. Corning PD just
I've heard this.
They knocked one out of the park,
Yeah.
and great for them.
Yeah.
They don't begrudge any agency that's able to do that for their members. But it tends to put. It pits one agency against another, and not always in a negative way, but, some people chase the dollar.
Yeah.
If I can make a few $1,000s more doing the same job, sometimes that's all the motivation they need to go somewhere. So we're in the middle of contract negotiations now. I hope it's successful enough and good enough to, make everybody happy and keep them where they're at.
Did you reap any of the benefit, for lack of a better word, after the strike, the corrections officers strike?
We did. We ended up hiring, I think, 11 state correction officers, but probably within 6 months, 6 of them left.
Yeah.
And went back, which we kind of knew was a possibility and certainly understand the reasons for them doing that. But, it was nice to be able to help them, to keep them on track for their retirement. And good to have that expertise there when they were there. So.
And also, people didn't realize how long they were without a paycheck.
Yeah.
by the time they could get through the whole system and get that job.
Yeah, it's
so a
long time.
lot of families in our area were affected by that.
Yeah, very much.
So
Very much.
it was interesting to see. I know Stu Ben did reap. I mean, I hate to use that term, reap the benefit, because these families suffered so much during all this.
Yeah, definitely.
What a mess. Well, thanks for giving us so much time this morning.
Yeah.
Let's do this again soon.
I love it.
Yeah, all
Really
right.
appreciate it.
Yeah, all right. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WIDC TV, Big Fox. The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. We are back broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio, and we thank Sheriff Schrom for being on the program this morning. It was nice to catch up with him, and that raised the age. I know we've been talking about it a lot lately, but destroying young people's lives. So we're glad that we could talk with him about that. On tomorrow's broadcast, we're going to be talking with Elmira City Court Judge candidate Jordan York, and we'll be talking with a representative from the Days of Incandescence, which starts tomorrow here in the Gaffer District. Also, on Friday, we'll be talking with Greg Tranter, and he has numerous books out about the Buffalo Bills right before the Bills play here on Fox, taking on the Panthers on Sunday at 1 o'clock. And he's going to tell us about his new book coming out and just about his really historic collection of Bills memorabilia and his lifelong fandom. So I think you'll find that interesting. We've been talking about the mayoral debate, which will happen tonight. We've got some comments from viewers. Cuomo was a disaster as governor. Worse, he gave us Hochul. Now the people of New York City are expected to vote for him to save the city. What a mess, I know. And again, I just don't see the Sliwa voters, even if Sliwa were to drop out, which he has said numerous times he will not. I don't see them going to Cuomo because of the disaster. Two people pointed this out. I'm going to read both. Spot on with this. I read Cuomo's quote fast and did not put two and two together, and this is perfect. I'm surprised Cuomo mentioned, quote, the wrong decision and people will die, end quote, considering his decision to put COVID patients into nursing homes. Fantastic point. Mark writes in, Cuomo telling people not to vote for Mamadani because he won't do the right thing and people will die is calling the kettle black. Cuomo killed people and he is still running for mayor, and that's in reference to the nursing home disaster where he decided through that edict to put COVID positive patients in with our most vulnerable in nursing homes. All right, I see some other comments coming in. We'll get to those in just a little bit. Two things about Mamadani here. Yesterday, President Trump observed when it came to the Mamadani campaign, they skipped socialism and they went down to communism. No, he's a communist and he's going to be maybe the mayor of New York. I don't know. Maybe, the polls are wrong, but these polls seem to be pretty consistent. But he would be, I would say, he would be the leader of the party. It's not Schumer. Schumer is shot. This poor guy, I feel sorry for him. I've known him for a long time. I think he's mentally gone. He's been beat up by young radical lunatics. And I think that Chuck Schumer, he is gonzo. I think he's probably not going to run. It shows that he's losing in every poll. Now, this is hard. He wants to meet with me. Sort of hard to be with a guy after I make a statement like that. But I'm just giving the facts. I think Chuck is probably finished. I know some people, Democrats, that would be good, some good politicians, and some, reasonable people. But I understand that they would not have a chance of getting even the concept of holding the torch. They're not going to get it. But they have some people that I really believe they're low IQ people. They're stupid people, and they seem to be leading the party. So we'll see what happens. So Trump declaring that Schumer is no longer the leader of the party, that Mamadani is the new leader. They're even putting out, and these pieces are so cliche, but Mamadani's 5 lessons for the Democrats. 1, so this is supposed to be a message to Democrats. 1, start with substance. 2, win attention through conflict. 3, let style serve substance. Now, there's been a lot of criticism that he only has that quote-unquote style. 4, meet culture with competence and conviction. I mean, this is just ignoring the anti-Semitic statements, these type of things. And 5, keep the loop small enough to echo. So this is the way Democrats can get back to winning, according to Jacobin, is through emulating Zohran Mamdani. Now, the Republican county chairs the 5 Republican county chairs in New York City have reaffirmed their unequivocal support for their party's nominee, Curtis Sliwa. The vote of confidence issued yesterday responded to numerous public calls for Sliwa to drop out. Quote, Republican voters are not going to vote for Andrew Cuomo, the party chairs joined in a joint statement. He lost his own party's primary badly and is not even appearing on the ballot on a major party line. Republicans should not have to clean up the mess Andrew Cuomo and the Democrats created, and we will not allow the political class to interfere with voters or hijack our ballot. And that's a very good point from the Republican chairs. All right, we got to take a short break. When we come back, more of your comments. Just a couple of things. Well, one last thing about this. I do have just a second. And then we'll move on from the mayor's race. So I hope that you'll watch the debate tonight. If you do, we will be talking about it tomorrow. But pressure is building for Curtis Sliwa to drop his long shot quest for Gracie Mansion. You've had some prominent Big Apple conservatives call for it. Boy, it's tough. Polling indicates the former governor is the only one with any chance of sending Mamdani packing, and only if Sliwa drops out. But the Guardian Angels founder insists he has no intention of doing so. And although he's terribly, even disastrously wrong about the wisdom of carrying on his campaign, Sliwa's diagnosis of Cuomo is spot on. Quote, I know you think you're the toughest guy alive, but you lost your own primary, right? You were rejected by your own Democrats. Andrew Cuomo failed everybody in that Democratic primary. He even admitted it. Now he's basically saying, I can't win without Sliwa's votes. Where are your votes? And that's a fair point. Despite Cuomo's universal name recognition and reputation as the kind of human bulldozer that might find success in City Hall, Mamdani soundly defeated him. Why? Because voters had already sniffed out the lack of conviction. There was never any great hunger for Cuomo's comeback after the sexual misconduct and pandemic mismanagement scandals ended his run in Albany. Not from anyone but the politician himself, I should say. And while Cuomo has, since his June loss, admitted bumbling, social media poor primary strategy, the more glaring reason for it was his lack of purpose. So at the end of the day, even though the New York Post asked or called for Sliwa to step down, Isaac Shore writes for the Post saying, Curtis Sliwa has a point. Voters want conviction, and it's shaping every race across the country. All right, when we come back, a couple of other New York State updates. Stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking. The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. We are back broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. Comment from Rick this morning. He says, good morning, Frank. Good morning, Rick. Wow, imagine that. One of Trump's innocent, pardoned January 6ers gets arrested, saying he's going to kill Hakeem Jeffries at a speech Jeffries is giving. Johnson is sued by the Attorney General of Arizona over Grijalva not being sworn in. Yes. I have a question. How can Trump knock down the East Wing of the White House, sue the DOJ for $230 million in easy money? His appointed people will approve it. He says it will go to charity. Yep. And how about blowing boats out of the water, blowing holes in Iran's nuclear sites? Isn't there a proper protocol to approve these actions? He doesn't follow any process, rules, or laws, and he gets away with it. Out of control. Who's minding the store? When is someone going to grow a backbone and stand up to him? He is making a fool out of all of us. Can't wait to see what Trump gets away with today. Comment from a different viewer. Trump throws support behind Sears in final days of Virginia's governor's race. I thought he had done that a while ago. Am I missing out? Because I think was that the second person who said that? Maybe something new. Back to New York State issues. The New York Police Department is stepping up its Back the Blue ceremony, including an advertising blitz. The Big Apple Police Department, this ties in because we've seen the attacks on police officers' reputations by Zohran Mamdani. So this is why I mention it. The Big Apple Police Department has been hemorrhaging cops in recent years. Listen to this. Losing more than 14,000 rank-and-file officers since 2020, and nearly 3,500 more expected to flee this year, and just 8,000 people applying to join this year compared to 18,000 back in 2017. So they're trying to rebuild their ranks. Now, state prisons, this is so sad, seeing a surge in number of assaults as staffing is at a low point. Should come as no surprise how the governor treated our corrections officers. After the strike, inmate assaults have surged more than 29% from 199 in April to 257 in September. In that same period of time, inmate on staff assaults dropped from 160 to 137, though they have been on the slow increase since June. The surge in violence comes as the total number of officers, sergeants, and lieutenants within the prison system dropped to 11,318, a decrease of nearly 42% since December. Hochul also vetoed a bill that was boosting. Let me take a step back. She vetoed legislation inspired by the vicious, deadly stabbing of EMS Lieutenant Allison Russo in 2022 that required 2 qualified medical first responders to be dispatched to 911 emergency calls in the Big Apple. She vetoed that yesterday. We got to take our last break and wrap up today's discussion. Two big updates on one on Hochul, one on Elise Stefanik. So stay with us. We'll be right back. And we are back, wrapping up today's discussion here on Frankly Speaking, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. Ken writes in, so according to one of your viewers, I guess it was better to have a president that let others make decisions and couldn't sign his own name. We should all remember to make an omelet, you have to break a few eggs. Thank you, Ken. So quickly on New York State, a former gubernatorial aide from Long Island, accused of acting as an unregistered agent of China and steering state contracts to PPE vendors with whom she had personal connections during COVID-19, is facing new allegations. Yes, this is in reference to Linda's son not being covered really efficiently. She was an aide to Hochul, a very important senior aide, as well as to former Governor Andrew Cuomo. She pleaded not guilty in federal court to a new superseding indictment, including charges of failure to register as a foreign agent, visa fraud, bank fraud, and money laundering. Prosecutors said that Sun engaged in political activities at the request of 2 unidentified individuals who were acting at the behest of the Chinese government in order to foster, quote, a closer economic and political relationship between Henan Province and New York State. The indictment alleged that Sun fraudulently obtained letters that purported to be from the executive chamber inviting delegations of PRC government officials to visit New York, with the PRC government official used to unlawfully obtain visas to enter the U.S., arranging for visiting PRC government officials to meet with New York State officials, which included, those New York State officials, Governor Hochul. Prosecutors said in exchange for Sun's political activities, the unnamed officials rewarded her by aiding her husband's business activities in China, including a frozen seafood shipping business. So former Hochul aide and governor aide, senior level, accused of being unregistered agent for China, and now has new charges. Finally, an independent expenditure committee with plans to back a gubernatorial bid for Representative Elise Stefanik was registered with the State Board of Elections on Tuesday. The PAC, the super PAC called Strong and Safe New York, Inc., was registered by Richard St. Paul and has an address in White Plains. The super PAC is forbidden from coordinating with a potential Stefanik campaign for governor, but can essentially raise unlimited funds in support of her bid. So we still don't have an official announcement from Stefanik, but a step in the right direction as someone who wants to see her run has formed a super PAC. We are out of time for today's edition of Frankly Speaking. Thank you to Sheriff Schrom for being our guest tomorrow on the program, Elmira City Court Judge candidate Jordan York, and a representative here from Corning. They'll tell us about the Days of Incandescence, which starts in the Gafford District tomorrow. And then on Friday, Greg Tranter and tell us all about his new book about the Buffalo Bills. All right, join us every weekday morning starting at 6 for Frankly Speaking, only on WYDC TV. Big Fox, we'll see you tomorrow morning bright and early. I look forward to it already.